Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video I'm just going to show you a little bit about how I make a statue and let you know that I am going to be sculpting a new statue. Now for those of you that weren't around, about 4 years ago I sculpted my first ever thing where I sculpted it from scratch. I did it traditionally using Super Sculpey, and it was a bust of a Kuma. And if you want to see that, I have like a super cut of all the sculpting. I'll post that up there. There's also slower versions if you want to see that. And then there's also just the final video showing you how I painted it up and everything. But that was the first thing I ever sculpted, and I thought pretty cool. It turned out all right for how new I was to the whole thing. Obviously I'd sculpted like little heads and things like that and on top of things, but never like a full-on scratch build sculpt. So that was my first thing. And I've just never been satisfied with it because of all the things that I would change about it. So I thought I could use a little bit more practice, and let's see what I've learned in the last 4 years, or 5-ish, closer to 5 years, and let's do the same thing again. I'm going to try to recreate it using like the same general pose, like you'll see some similarity in the pose, but I'm going to just sculpt it as if I hadn't done it before, and see the differences and that kind of thing. I think it'll be interesting, and a lot of you really loved watching the process videos, and then even the supercut at the end, even though it was like really fast and not meant to be a how-to video. It was just kind of like to show the progress of the whole sculpt. So I'm going to do the whole thing again. It's roughly the same size, and I thought that would be interesting for some of you, or maybe new people who aren't even familiar with my channel but want to do some sculpting, how I go about doing it, because this is definitely not a traditional way of doing it. This is different than how I did it the first time, but it's kind of what I was aiming for the first time without as much knowledge as I have now. So the first thing you're going to do when you're going to sculpt something out of clay of basically any variety, if you're going to have limbs and stuff, you want to have an armature. It helps to support, like if you just had an arm hanging off and it was clay, it would eventually sag, and you don't want that. So you want to have some kind of armature. I use fairly light gauge wire, and I just twist them together with a drill. And you twist them together so that they're a lot more rigid. Like, this is very hard to bend. It'll flex overall, but it's not going to actually bend unless you use pliers or something. But what I do is I take a big long piece and I fold it over twice, so I have 4, and then I twist them together to make a very solid centerpiece. And then I twist together a smaller bit for the arms, and then I connect those up at the top with epoxy. It's underneath the styrofoam or the aluminum foil. It's just some epoxy, some 2-part self-curing epoxy. It doesn't need baking or anything. Just to hold those together. And then I do throw some aluminum foil on here just to fill out the middle, because you don't want to make it weigh a ton. I know I don't do this quite the right way. I know most people like to fill as much as they can with the aluminum foil, but I do like a mixture of additive and subtractive sculpting, so I like to not have too much foil in here. So once I get this part done, I just start slopping clay on there, and then I'll be adding the muscles and taking away and stuff like that. But anyway, as far as the armature goes, you want to get it into your general shape. And what I do, or did this time, and I was kind of aiming for it the first time, is I use some more epoxy. And first, I don't know which order to go in. Okay, so I put a nut on here. I put a nut on the threads of this giant bolt right here, like a regular nut, like one of these. Okay, I just have an extra one down there. So I put a nut on here. I put a curl, like a little pigtail at the bottom of the armature, and I slide that over. Then I put another nut on top of that, and I crank it down so that they're as tight together as those two nuts can be. And then I use epoxy to put them together to hold everything in place. And that gives me a turntable effect, which is super convenient because it's like this much of thread that I can use, so there's tons of spinning I can do, and that's really helpful. I also can spin the base itself, which I'll show you in a second. But what I do is I use the epoxy to kind of just make it one solid piece, and that allows me to unthread and remove the sculpture from the stand. And the reason that's helpful is I have this bolt right here. It's a 5-inch bolt going through the stand that I made. I just bought this from Michael's, drilled it out, countersunk the hole, put a washer in there, and put some feet on it so that I could spin it around. And then I just used another washer and a bolt to hold it, or a nut to hold it together. But the reason I have this is this keeps my statue up off the table so I can actually sculpt on it, because obviously I don't want to be sculpting at table height. So I can do that. It'd be nice if I could thread this on camera. So I can leave it up high like this so I can see it better, but what I can also do is I have another longer bolt that lifts it up even higher, and that lets me get underneath in the arms and stuff, but still keeps it nice and stable because this is a 3/8 inch bolt. It's going to be nice and solid, and this base allows it to not tip or anything, so I can raise this up as high as I want, get under it, and still leave it sturdy and nice and solid. And then the most important reason I do this is because I'm using Super Sculpey, and it has to be baked. And my oven doesn't just have unlimited size, so what I can do is when I'm done doing all the sculpting, I can take it off the thread, replace this bolt with a very short bolt, and use the wood or not. I don't think it's going to burn at the temperatures you're cooking at, but either way. And then you can just use a very, very short one, just enough to hold the statue up. Throw that in the oven and cook it, and then you're good. So this is a very versatile setup. I know it's nowhere near traditional. It's not what most people would do, probably what anybody would do, but that's the way I do it, and it does work. And I'm pretty sure even if this wood, it's like basswood, it shouldn't burn at the temperature. It's like 175 for Super Sculpey, I think. It shouldn't burn, but if you wanted to, you could soak it in water and it wouldn't do anything, or just replace it with a sheet of steel with a little hole in it, and just to give you a base for the statue. But that's why I like using the bolt thread, because it's a nice machine thread. So, I mean, it's obviously a machine thread, but you get tons of thread on there, so you can spin it around all you want, and you can just use a little tiny one, and it'll work just fine. You get plenty of thread on there to hold it together, and that should work. But yeah, I am using Super Sculpey again. I contacted the people over there, and I said, hey, I want to do another statue. You want to send me some clay? And they did. They sent me all the clay I wanted, and I love using Super Sculpey for statues. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to have a new Akuma statue here pretty soon in the future, and I'm going to be showing you guys the videos, and this is how I like to do an armature for a bust like this. And then the other thing, which I haven't tested yet, but I'm hoping works, is I can use the nut. It looks like the torso is going to end right here, but it's not. It's going to be a little bit down closer to here. If it works out just right, I can sculpt it so that I can actually thread the two halves of the statue together if I wanted to do a bottom half, or if I just wanted to connect it to whatever base I'm doing with a thread. Otherwise, I can just zip this right off with a Dremel tool, and then I just have a bust that I need to connect to the base. So you do get some extra versatility. It looks like the torso is going to be really long, but I think we should be at the hips, like right about here. Yeah, the hips should be right about here. So we'll see how that works out, but it's really mostly just for the functionality of I can spin the base if I want to, or I can spin the actual statue on the base, or I can replace the height of the thread or the bolt so that I can have it up or down off the table, and that'll work, and that's it. So there it is. If you guys have any questions about the way I do armatures or the way this could work or anything like that, I'll be happy to answer them in the comment section below. But otherwise, we're just going to have some fun, do some practice sculpting, and make a new statue, a busty type statue. So there it is. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day, and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.